Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You're tuned in to execute your travel shoots like a Nat Geo Pro. Of course, this is a wonderful series brought to you by Dotan Saguy and Gail Fisher, who I will welcome now to the program. How's it going, guys?
We're
Great.
doing great. Yeah, so glad to be with you, Derek, today.
Good to
Thank you.
have you back. A ton of information and experience coming from these two. So if you guys haven't seen part one, we'll get that link dropped into the YouTube comments section. And equally, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop those into the comment section as well. We will have a Q&A once they wrap up the presentation. So Dotan, Gail, I'll turn it over to you and I'll see you in a bit for the Q&A.
Sounds great, Derek. Let me share my screen real quick and we'll be on our way. And see. Yeah, all set. So yeah, thank you so much for having us again. And this is the second part of a series that I'm hoping you guys caught the first part about planning your travel shoots like a Nat Geo Pro. If you haven't, it's on YouTube. It's getting lots of views, and we hope you like it. But don't watch it now because we got something good for you right now. And that's how to execute your shoots like an Nat Geo Pro. So this will be more like once you're on the ground, and we will first introduce ourselves, and I'll let Gail introduce herself first.
Hi, my name is Gail Fisher, and thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to tune in for the next hour. We hope you enjoy our presentation. For 20 some years, I worked as a staff photojournalist and a senior photo editor at the Los Angeles Times. As a photojournalist, I've traveled extensively throughout the world, covering social issues and geopolitical issues. And I've transitioned out of newspapers and then into magazines, where I joined the staff at National Geographic magazine. And I was fortunate enough to work with some of the most distinguished photographers in the world. And I'd like to share some of that insight with you today. Okay, Dotan, why don't
Awesome. Well, you
you
guys
jump?
might have heard me on this program before, even before this series, talking about street photography. I'm a street photography and documentary photographer. I am author of three photo books, the last of which just came out. It's called Dogtown, and it's about the dogs of Venice Beach. So super fun book. All black and white, shot in Leica. It's out on Amazon and everywhere else right now. And I've been teaching also with Leica Academy and a bunch of other outfits. And today I also started teaching together with Gail under storyteller workshops, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about that. But that's a really unique opportunity for you to learn with us and go on adventures and trips that we organize and that are very much travel photography oriented, hence this series. So let's just go right into the agenda, and we'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start with pack for the day, which, we talked last time about, gear and, what to plan to bring and so on for travel photography, what works well. And this will be very much about just bringing just what you need for that day. So kind of planning day by day what you want to bring to your shoots. We're going to talk about carving out time to shoot alone. And by the way, we're looking at beautiful images shot by Gail in Egypt while we're showing you this agenda. So carving out time to shoot alone, this is in the context of, you don't always go on assignment shooting travel, or very few of us do. And even, Gail and I don't do that often, but we often also go on trips with families and friends, family and friends, and we want to be able to negotiate how to do some real photography while not alienating anyone. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Seeking authenticity obviously is a really important part of shooting travel. Gail, off to you.
Okay. Yes, when you're shooting, try to capture the essence. Try to find something that's personal and unique to you, that resonates with you. Remember, it's your vision. And try to capture the heart and soul about the place you're photographing. This can be an abstract idea, or it can be the meaning of something. Shadows and light, like in this image that I photographed in the tombs of Egypt, add to the essence of this photograph. And context. Context is so important in your stories. This is the information the viewer can identify with. Context shapes your understanding, and context gives you a sense of place. The what, the where, the why, the how. And visual variety. This is the key to constructing your photo essays or stories. And storytelling is the foundation of a narrative, creating that sense of place, personality, emotion. It's using a photograph to go beyond just simple documentation and using a variety of images such as landscapes, which of course create that sense of place that we all look for, portraits and emotion, wide angle shots, mid-range shots, tight shots, details. These are all the building blocks to help you with your storytelling. Okay, Dotan.
Yeah, and you don't bump into a great scene every 5 minutes, so working each scene until it's gone is kind of my motto, and we'll talk about why and how to do that. We'll talk about how to go beyond the surface when you're in a, even in a touristy location, how you can really kind of dig beyond the surface and get great shots that are not, obvious tourist snapshots. I know a lot of you guys are already very familiar with your camera settings and using them creatively, but this is kind of, we'll go into a little bit of a reminder of how much that can enhance your travel photography and what sort of tools, what sort of settings you can use to do that. Defying Murphy's Law. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Murphy's Law, but there's anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and oftentimes that will affect, not being able to bring back the images that you want because your SD card was, is toast or something else happened to your equipment. So we'll talk a little bit about how to, help defy that. And then finally, you also want to be, not just your images, but you want to bring yourself back safe. So we'll talk about some tips to do that and things that can help, especially when you're traveling to some remote locations. So without further ado, let's just go right into it. Pack for the day. We've evolved to use these tools. I mean, I personally didn't use them, but they've been around for a while, and we've been, I think, as humans over tens and hundreds of thousands of years, we've been accustomed to collecting them and wanting more and more tools. And I think we all tend to be the same way a little bit with our equipment and try to be ready for every situation and to have the lens and the equipment for every situation. Unfortunately, that can become very inconvenient when you're traveling and, to try and bring all your tools every day with you. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can, so basically you need to optimize by knowing what you want for that day. It's good to really have an agenda of what you want to shoot or what area you want to shoot in that day, and really understanding what type of tool will help you do that, and only bringing the tools that you need for that day. So I personally like to go extremely light, kind of like this in this photo. Especially if I'm going through, a market in Oaxaca, Mexico, or something like that, and I really want to be inconspicuous. I don't want people to think of me as a tourist with a lot of expensive equipment. I want to be the fly on the wall. So right sizing for those kinds of situations, especially, is really useful. Carving out time to shoot alone. This is something I've learned personally the hard way. I can think of several trips way back when I went and I was like, I'm going to do some real photography. And my family was like, no, you're not. And you're coming with us to the museum and you're coming, you're here to be on vacation with us. And we've, it led to some, I don't know if that's, that sounds familiar to anybody listening, but, it can get a little heated. So I think it's good to really negotiate that ahead of time. And what I found really useful is when I'm with family, I just commit to being with family and I just photograph my family and I try to make the best photographs I can of my family. So this is my wife and my dog walking in the neighborhood of Montmartre in Paris. Actually shot 2 weeks ago. And this is a much older photo of my kids running up and down the street on Ile de la Cité in Paris. And same thing. I was just trying to, be with them and take nice photos of them, which is great practice. And you're getting these free models to practice with. So why not take full advantage of that and everybody's happy? It's a great time to gather some scouting information when you're doing that because, you might be taking photos of your family, but you can also write down exactly the location. So when you actually negotiate the time to go out on your own, you can actually go back and shoot it the way you want it to. Um, the other thing I tend to do is send my family as decoys sometimes when I see an opportunity. This was also shot about a week ago. We were going to this cabaret in Montmartre in Paris, and this couple was kissing on the corner, so I sent my wife up, and she's the one walking center left here, and towards the cabaret, and I was kind of pretending to take photos of her, and really was taking the whole scene as a photograph. So sometimes that can be useful to be with family, but the best time is when you can really carve out time to shoot alone, and because it's rare, like you don't want to be doing this. You're mostly on vacation. You don't want to be doing this all the time. It's really important to claim strategic times. So, nobody will complain. People love to sleep in on vacation. So if you're going to be the one going out at 7 o'clock in the morning and you'll be back for breakfast, people may not even know you were gone. So this was shot at 7 a.m. or even earlier, maybe at sunrise in Havana, Cuba. And you also bump into situations at that time that you may not encounter, during the day. So it's actually really special. Not only do you get the light, but you can get some unique situations. Same for the golden hour. Let your family or your friends have a beer at the hotel bar or something at that time, and or visit one last museum, and you can claim that a couple hours and go on your own and enjoy that beautiful light. Same for bad weather. People don't tend to want to go out in bad weather. Maybe they want to play poker in the lobby or something, and you can go out and get those dramatic shots. Sometimes, it does take a while to find a great situation. Yeah, for me, it tends to take a while actually. So this was something I bumped into maybe 2 hours into my shoot. And I saw this little square, people playing soccer, and there's this layering going on where you had this epic mural behind it, which is actually really big it turns out to be of Snow White sleeping as a symbol of communism under Cuba under communism. So there was a lot of symbolism in this photograph, but I was also waiting for a moment, and I didn't see this angle initially. So anyway, it's really important if you're going to carve time to shoot alone, just make it count and try to get at least a couple hours so you have really the time to find those situations and then to work those situations. And we'll talk more about how why it's important to really stick with a situation if you have something good. Seeking authenticity is much easier if you're in a you sort of implant yourself in a neighborhood that is actually vibrant local neighborhood. So in Paris I tend to pick locations where I can just go out the door and have a area full of local life. So this was actually I shot this in April, but this was shot a week or two ago. And I was just coming back from a restaurant or walking my dog. I actually took my dog with me. So I was just walking around the neighborhood. It was not on the shoot, but I tended to just have my camera around my shoulder in case something like this would show up. So it's great to seek out, to have authentic scenes, to be ready at any moment to be able to capture these and to go out at different time of day. It's much easier if you have a hotel that's right there and you're just kind of getting to know the neighborhood. And when you do that, you start engaging with people. This is a guy who was out of this bistro every day around 4 or 5 p.m. and he would feed the street pigeons. And he had this whole relationship, and it would always be the same pigeons. And I kept bumping into him, and we chatted, and he let me take some photos. I shared the photos, but you start really getting into those authentic scenes because you are now part of the neighborhood.
Okay, we're going to talk about essence now. We hosted a workshop in Paris in 2024 in April, and each participant selected a theme that they were interested in shooting while they were walking through the streets of Paris. This gave them focus to their photo essay that they would produce. Otherwise, without a focus, you're just wandering around the streets and you're looking, but you're probably not seeing. Aaron, one of the students, selected his essay on romantic Paris. Well, Paris, as you all know, it's referred to as a city of love, the most romantic city in the world. It's also one of the top honeymoon destinations. And so for his shot list, he included a variety of images of couples enjoying Paris together. And of course, he had to include iconic places like the Eiffel Tower to give his essay a sense of place. And another one of our students, Jerry, selected a theme that was both personal and characteristic to the location. He's an avid biker, so he selected a topic that he loves doing. His shot list included not only iconic places throughout Paris, but what exactly is the bike culture in Paris? Context. Oh my gosh, context is so important to your story. These images are from West Java, just outside of Jakarta. And this was a wild animal sanctuary where the wild roam free and humans can venture into their world. Well, in this image, you see wild animals, but you have no idea, are these animals in the wild? Where exactly are they? So this photograph, it doesn't give you context. It doesn't give you a sense of place. Whereas this image, this gives you a sense of place. It's the backdrop. These surroundings play an important role in supplying information. In this image, there's several layers of information within your frame. You see the car, you see the animals, you see the people. So in this image is full of context. But what's happening? What's happening, this shapes our understanding. In this photograph, these animals are curious. But why are they interacting with the people? The how and the why. Well, this picture gives you context because uh, these animals are obviously being fed. And it's interesting because when you enter this wild animal sanctuary, as part of the fee you pay to get into the park, they give you food to feed the animals. So they actually want you to interact with the wildlife, which I found very, very enjoyable. So be creative and give the viewer a different perspective with your context. Now we're going to go to Alaska. And these are some images where I spent a lot of time. And we're probably going to be offering photography workshops here in 2025. So stay tuned. This is China Poot Peak in Homer, Alaska, and I'm shooting actually from our deck in China Poot. It's a remote wilderness lodge 4 miles across from the Homer Spit. Scout out great vistas. Give your story a sense of place. Set the stage with these great vistas. This is relatively easy to do, of course, in Alaska because, oh my gosh, it's just so wild and beautiful and scenic. This is Mount Denali in the background, formerly called Mount McKinley. So it's really important that you go at the right time. And we're actually back in Homer here, well, China Poot, and I've kayaked across the bay to these sandbars. And believe it or not, it's about midnight, but this is the land of the midnight sun. And the light is just beautiful. It's beautiful, sometimes from about 8 o'clock till midnight during the summer. So chill, enjoy, drink a glass of wine, wait for the light. And I chose to wait, and I was rewarded by capturing some people boating on this lake that gave it scale. So composing carefully is very important, of course, in your photograph. Framing in photography refers to composing your image, what to include and in the frame and what to leave out. In this image, I chose to shoot with a wide-angle lens and include a foreground. The layering works nicely here because there's separation between the clouds and the boat. And I also use symmetry and the rule of thirds here. Okay, now we're going to go to wide shots, and we're in Burma now. And these are some images from Burma. It's very dear to my heart. I love traveling here. Burma, of course, now is currently called Myanmar. I want to show you how to achieve visual variety in shooting. When you're shooting from a high place, you can easily capture a sense of place. Look for something in the frame to give it scale, like these people walking. This is a village in Mandalay. It's a good establishing shot, helping to set the scene for your story. And get in close. Shoot from the inside, not the outside. Spend time, like Dotan mentioned earlier, be a fly on the wall. I strive to not have my presence in the photograph, so nobody's responding to me. I feel like I've failed if people are responding to me when I'm doing documentary photography. This happens to be a scene in a monastery in Mandalay. And be creative. Try framing your subject within a frame. I try to do this fairly often. Here I was in a restaurant and I saw this oval window, and then looking out, I saw this scene. So I waited for the right time, and this can be another kind of establishing shot. So visual variety, this is another type of scene. And here I'm shooting from a hot air balloon. And I'm capturing not only the physical part of the landscape, but also the cultural part of the landscape with all these rice paddies. And this is in the countryside outside of Inlay Lake. I like to get down on the ground. Whoa, sorry about that. Oh, what happened here? Oops.
One more.
Back here, sorry about that. There we are. We're back on track now.
Here we go.
There we go. Yeah, as I was mentioning, I really like to get down on the ground and shoot up sometimes, especially to clean up backgrounds. And in the corner of the left-hand frame there, you see a person. So that person gives you scale, which is very important. All right, now we're going to go to mid-range. So these images are from the Solstice Photography Workshop that we hosted in 2023 in Santa Barbara. Dotan and myself are very hands-on with our students, and we go out in the field with them. We're available if they have questions or need advice. And I find that these mid-range images, even though they're very important in your story, they can be very difficult to make, especially with busy backgrounds. So you have to be patient, look at your subject, adjust your aperture accordingly if you need a wide aperture or maybe not so wide, frame your image carefully, get in close, and also getting down low helps clean up the background like in this image. And in this case, the background was so busy and so chaotic that I really needed to shoot from a low angle. And then I did a slow shutter speed. So I virtually took my background away. And one of the great benefits of medium shots is that you show your subjects within the context of their surroundings, whereas a close-up isolates the subject. Medium shots are often used to frame 2 or 3 or 4 subjects in a scene, like in this situation. And by framing the main subject front and center, like I've done here, I've achieved a nice rule of thirds and layering. Okay, we're back in Burma again. So don't overlook details. I was wandering the stupas and pagodas in Bagan, and I came across this brass relic that was almost buried in the earth. This can add depth and intrigue to your story. And you can use light and shadows that made this puppet hanging on a tree much more interesting. A little blur motion with a slow shutter speed can add a nice touch to the composition. These are technically these small detail images are technically very difficult, are not technically difficult to shoot at all, but these detail images are important and they're personal. And this was a small ornate object on a door that I found interesting, especially the way the light shone on it. All right, portraits. Well, we're back in Alaska again. And environmental portraits show the subjects in their surroundings. It's an image that captures a subject at work or a place that is relevant to them. Basically, a meaningful subject, a meaningful setting to the subject. In this case, this was a woman worker who was drilling for water on a remote site in Alaska. And this was a found moment. I was documenting the scene. And so I very rarely control the scene unless it's a confrontational portrait. Otherwise, I'm just in the background. Candid, capturing moments, natural expressions where the subject is not aware of the camera. These are unposed pictures, and these are the type of photos that we use in documentary photography. Pick the right characters. Pick subjects who are comfortable in front of a camera. Like Dotan mentioned earlier, he uses his family a lot when he's traveling. Well, I'm traveling here with my daughter and son-in-law, and my daughter's so comfortable in front of the camera. She's had a lot of experience. Anyways, look for beautiful light and throw in a reflector if you need to. But sometimes you need to direct the shot. I was shooting for a lodge that was opening, and here as you direct the shot, you control the light, you control the scene, you control the placement, and most important thing is to get your subjects comfortable, at ease. And the man in this picture, he was not comfortable. I had to really work hard to make him comfortable. And anyways, what's unique is the view from this sauna. And most saunas in Alaska don't have views. So by shooting through the glass, placing the subjects in the right position, I was able to show the reflection of the outdoors. That's what's so unique about this sauna. And put good natural light to good use. Early evening light created by the setting sun at the end of the day is actually my favorite time to shoot. It's warm, it's soft, it's beautiful, it's not harsh, and there's a lot of shade as the sun dips into the horizon to give your background shade so that the subjects stand out. In this case, I was photographing more than one person, actually four, family again and friends, and they were looking directly into the sun. So the sunglasses were necessary. And of course, to avoid this, just you don't want your subject squinting into the light, into the camera. So, okay, we're back to Dotan now.
Yeah, so I was talking earlier about great scenes not being around every corner. So when you find a good one, this was in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, those kids were playing in the street. You plan on spending some time there because it might take you a while to get to the next great scene, or you might not get another one that day. So when I see potential in a scene like this here, the kids were playing, the mom was watching with the little sister and the dog, and then I was trying to layer the workers in the background, and there's the guy who was coming back and forth with buckets, and I was trying to put him in the right spot and for the kids to play right in the right, so separate everything. Anyway, it takes a while, and so I really encourage you to work a good scene that you see, just work the angles, work your settings, etc. This was a scene where the kids were playing on a motorcycle, parked motorcycle, again in Havana, Cuba, and this little girl was playing with them until the mom came to pick her up. But that came maybe 15, 20 minutes into the kids playing, and so that really added some drama to the scene. And had I not stayed that whole time, I could have just taken a snapshot of the kids playing on the motorcycle and gone away, but I wouldn't have gotten this shot. So it really pays to stay in those situations and really work the scene. I try to work the scene until it's gone. That's kind of that's how I operate in those circumstances. Some, especially if you try to layer, that adds a whole another layer of complexity, pun intended, to your photography, because now, you have to wait for everything to fall into the right place. You have to find the right angle so that everything gets separated. Here, I had a couple of elements in the foreground with those two guys talking, where you can only see their hands. Those were static, but the kids were moving around a little bit. And then this couple came by with a suitcase and kind of made the shot. But it really takes time to approach these scenes and work them. Sometimes the solution is not just with patients, but also with settings. So in this case, I was shooting this scene at this elderly center, people playing dominoes, which is very popular in Cuba. They were playing, but it was super busy. I couldn't find a way to really render the scene in sort of the dramatic way or give it some kind of life. And until I figured out that I really needed to just open my aperture all the way to the max, and I went all the way down to 1.2. So I set it to 1.2, and I got some great shots that way. And by far the best shot of that whole 40-minute session was this one with this very shallow depth of field. So going beyond the surface sometimes means connecting with locals. We did an example of that earlier with the guy and his pigeons. So we've got another bird here. This was an old guy that I was with a friend, and we met him. The friend spoke Spanish, which helped because I don't. And he engaged him, and we found out that he was really fond of this chicken, and that was kind of his passion, and he was feeding the chicken. So what's really helpful in those situations is ask like a toddler. That's actually one of my mentors used to say that is just, ask them anything. Ask them about, how old they are, or why they love chickens, and through asking like a toddler, we got invited to the guy's 90th birthday, which happened to be a few days later. And there was a chicken on top of the cake, which was, that was amazing. And we got to meet his family, and we got to shoot inside his home. And he had an amazing story actually about him, his life story, and how that coincided with Cuba and everything that happened in Cuba. So that was really like a fantastic thing to share. Sometimes it's really good also to know the cultural themes and societal themes behind, the location that you're going to. And we talked about that in the first presentation, to research, the culture and so on. But it really pays off when you're in situations like this. I knew that there was a Hurricane Irma, that had hit Cuba a year or so before I went. So I was looking for some, elements of that in my photographs. I wanted to render some of that. And this was a young couple that had bought this ruin and was trying to make it into their home. And they were working hard at that, not at that particular moment, but it really showed the intimacy and how they were working together on this project. And so it helped sort of, tell the story of what's happening in Cuba. Same thing with the heat. Obviously, it's a very hot place, and there was a heat wave when we went, and the electricity was out, so you can see those fans are on the floor. And so, being aware of all that, you can also not just being aware, but you're going to show your photos to people that are not aware. So putting all those elements in them for context, as Gail was saying earlier, is really important. Visiting local artisans is another way to go beyond the surface, and it's usually pretty easy because they want to sell you things. In this case, we got invited into a home and saw how they worked. Camera settings, I know you guys are all, pretty familiar with them. But, we often get people coming to workshops with a camera on program mode. So it's always worth repeating. You can really create a sense of visual priority or visual hierarchy by using, setting your aperture to blur everything in the background, to a shallow depth of field. Here, it was actually really dark in this room too, so it really helped to be working at, I think it was at 1.4 on the 35 millimeter. And you can see how, really the focus is very sharply on the performer, and you can sort of see people's faces and how interested they are, but it's really, there's a clear hierarchy. You can also use a slow shutter speed and panning to kind of isolate those kinds of things. You know, this scene would have looked pretty mundane had I just used, program mode, but by panning a little bit and a slow shutter speed, and it looks a lot more creative, a lot more artistic, same as this shot. You can really get your photos to, hit a lot harder by being a little bit creative with your settings. So I personally love to, keep my camera on aperture priority unless I find a scene where speed priority, like for this, really works well. Obviously, you want to bring, if you've shot great images on your travel, you want to make sure they get home with you. And one thing I do on assignment is, like I did here in Cuba, is I use one SD card a day. I tend to not get the big SD cards, the 256 to 512 gigs. Those I don't get, because if they get corrupted, if I shot all week or 2 weeks and then the card gets corrupted, then I've lost everything. So I tend to use one small, maybe a 32 gig, a 64 gig every day. And I have a whole little portfolio with them, and I swap them every day and every night. Oh, first of all, I don't delete anything. So even if I messed up a whole bunch of shots, I will leave them alone, because that's how that's how cards get degraded, by deleting shots on the fly in camera. So I just don't delete anything. And when I get home, or to my hotel, I will offload the SD card onto the external hard drive that I have, and that way I have two copies. And since I'm using a different SD card the next day, that SD card will stay. So I now have two copies. I have one on the external hard drive, one on the SD card, and I try to also keep them in separate places. I will lock up my hard drive maybe in the safe, in the hotel safe, and maybe I'll carry my SD cards with me in my photo bag. And that way, if one gets stolen or damaged, or, there's a leak or something, I still have another copy of the pictures. Obviously, you also want to bring yourself safe home, not just your pictures. So I think it's really help, you really want to be aware of your surroundings. We talked last time about hiring a fixer and how valuable that can be. I highly, highly recommend that if you can, and if you have, if you have the budget and if you can find one. And we explained how to find one a little bit last time on the last episode of this. Um, Hiring a fixer can really also be useful for safety, because they know they're locals. They know the areas that where you need to really pay attention, and they might know even the people that you need to be watching for, and that sort of thing. So I highly recommend that for safety, as well as for finding great spots to shoot. There are now things, on iPhones, like such as like Find Friends and things like that, and where it's helpful to have those on, so that, if you're with family or with friends and you're going shooting on your own, at least they know where you are and they can track you down if something happens, or, if you get in trouble. Some areas you really want to maintain a low profile. This was in Romania. I was teaching a workshop for Leica, and we were going through a very rough, it was a Roma camp that was just, very, very poor. And we dressed appropriately. We didn't want to have any equipment, dangling. We were just very, careful there. Sometimes in situations like this, it's even better to just shoot with your phone. So you really don't have, you're not exposing anything. You don't want any fancy jewelry or watches or anything like that. You really want to be, under the radar. And also making sure that your subjects would agree to be photographed. I know sometimes you can, sneak something from, just waist level, just, just and try to sneak up on people. But you have to think of, like, in this case, obviously I was not in danger. This baby was not going to jump at me. But, you could get yourself in bad situations if people who don't want to be photographed find out that you're photographing them. So just, make sure that whomever you're photographing would be okay to be photographed. And sometimes, in this case, I actually asked, but then I told them I'm taking candid. So I waited a little bit to get more of a candid shot. Um, Staying safe also means just physically safe, in terms of what you're absorbing there, what you're eating or drinking. Be aware that local street food, I know in Cuba, I was, I had been told, had I not been told, I would totally have indulged in it looked fantastic. but your stomach may not be built like the locals' stomach, and you don't want to be spending the rest of that vacation or trip in the bathroom. So I bring my snack, I bring my bottles of water, and I try to stick to that. This was actually in Cuba, and in addition to not having any power during that trip, they also were having trouble getting water. The water system was not functioning properly, and some people were pumping water out of the sewer, not the sewer, but whatever the pipe is in the in the sidewalk. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to drink that. So really, important in some places to bring your own water and snacks if you want to come home in one piece. All right, so I think this is what we were presenting today, but this is don't go anywhere because we've got a Q&A coming up, and we're going to be answering some great questions that I'm hoping you have. So if you have any questions, if you want to think about questions in the next couple of minutes, feel free to throw them into the YouTube chat, and Derek will pick them up, and hopefully we'll get to answer them. In the meantime, while we gather all this stuff, I just wanted to let you know a little bit more about the workshops that Gail and I are organizing, and in which you can very much, we would love for you to join us. So we have, we've got you covered on this, and we've got very small groups, so we can really bring personal attention to everybody in the group. As Gail mentioned, we're very hands-on. We're not the kinds of workshop organizer who will send you into the field and meet you at night to try and review your photos. We go with you every step of the way. We're traveling with you. We're in the street with you. We're giving you tips as you shoot. So it's very much that kind of a workshop. We stay at really nice places. They tend to be all inclusive because we don't want you to have to worry about anything. And it's total cultural immersion. We're doing some in France right now. We're only doing them in locations that we know like the back of our hand. So I grew up in France. Gail knows Alaska extremely well. I've been to Cuba several times. Those are the kinds of places we run our workshops at. And because we know those places so well, we give you unparalleled access to kind of behind the scenes things that you wouldn't find if you just went as a tourist, including local cuisine, because I grew up in France and I love food, and so I love sharing not just my fondness of food, but my knowledge about the different cultures of food in France and everything. So that's very much part of the workshop. We go deep into the culture, even beyond the photography. And I would say the number one thing that people love about the workshop, when we polled them, was making their own photo book. So at the end of each workshop, we have people make their own photo book. Gail is an absolute expert at this. She actually is the one who edited and sequenced my 3 photo books. And so she will do that with you when you come to our workshop. And this is one of our workshop participants showing off the photo book that he made during the workshop in April. We also can help you get published if you wish, and if you have a story that lends itself to it. There are blogs that have published our students. We have an actual workshop that, if you're interested, we're going to Provence in October. So please, please, please get in touch with us about this, because there's only a few spots left. But it's going to be absolutely magical. It's inclusive as always, all inclusive as always. It's really time travel. Gail and I scouted it, and it feels like time travel through beautiful medieval villages in Provence. And there's a curated set of local restaurants that we're going to bring you to that are fantastic. And there's even an optional Paris photo VIP tour. So once after the workshop, we get back to Paris, and there's a few days where we can actually, guide you at Paris Photo, which is the biggest photo fair in the world, and the most prestigious, I should say. And we can, basically give you a VIP experience there, if you wish. So this is an add-on to the trip, if you're interested. So yeah, so absolutely get in touch. This is our website. This is our email address. Even if you have questions about this presentation, I don't mean just about the workshops. We're always happy. We do this out of, this is really a labor of love for us in terms of, spending time with students and teaching what we know and sharing the knowledge. So please feel free to reach out. We very much look forward to connecting with you. And now, Derek, if you want, we can take some questions and answer, hopefully answer some.
Yeah, definitely. We'll start it off with a comment from Gianluca joining us. When talking about prioritizing friends versus family photos, says, I do the same with my friends. Hey, move to there and walk slowly to here. Whatever it takes, right? Gotta have
Yeah, I
your
mean,
little
if you,
tricks.
yeah, I mean, you've got them with you. I think one comment I want to make about that is you have to differentiate your posed shots and your stage shots from your actual documentary shots. It would be wrong to present something as a documentary shot that's actually been staged and is with friends. But to the extent that you're representing what you shot, in an honest way, there's nothing wrong with doing both.
I like that. Differentiate there. Now, we did have a question kind of on the same topic of working a scene. How do you avoid affecting or tampering with what's happening while you're spending time there and working the scene?
Yeah. I mean, I'll let Gail maybe also give her, her opinion on this because we might have different ways of doing it. Um, there are scenes where you see that they're happening and people are busy. I mean, in the protest or in a, some kind of, fair or something. And no matter what you do, you're not going to disturb the scene because they're already doing what they're doing. And all you have to do is be that fly on the wall and capture it. There are some scenes where if you do go into them, they will notice that you're there and they'll react to you. Um, in that case, if I know that I can't get the shot that I want right away, then I will engage with them and introduce myself and create a rapport, and then tell them that I wish to shoot the scene candid. And, they should just go right back to what they were doing. I was pleased to meet them. If that's okay for me to take a few photos, I'll just stay there, but they don't have to look at the camera. And then I try to make myself forgotten, and wait for the right moment. So those are kind of the approaches that I personally use. Gail, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
yeah, I totally agree with everything you've said. And my
Gail? Yep.
background, yes, hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, my background, of course, is as a photojournalist, and I'm such a purist. I wouldn't think about going into a scene and changing anything. And again, yeah, sometimes you need to get permission from people, and then you just hang and you let the situation evolve. So yeah, no, I would never change a situation.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of leaving it enough time, so people do what they're doing, and even if you break that whole thing, it sort of reestablished itself. It reestablishes itself after a few minutes if you just leave it time, and then at that point you have their okay to shoot, so you're good on both sides, on both points.
I had a conversation come up yesterday, and you guys are way more well traveled than I am. So I want to hear your takes on it. On is it more difficult, or let's frame it this way: how is it more difficult? How is it easier? The fact that everybody is so used to cameras now, everybody has a camera. You see a lot more of them. Street photography is more of a thing and less of a why would people walk around taking pictures of random things? It's a little more understood. Um, how does it make it harder for what you guys do? How does it make it easier?
I think I think unfortunately and fortunately, it's great that everybody has a camera, but I think most people think of themselves as photographers. And I think it's actually, oh, like for publications and what have you, it's actually devalued photography. A lot of my friends that are photojournalists are really struggling because everybody has a camera now, and gosh, just like people think everybody's a photographer, a lot of people think they're editors too, because they can put their own little photo shows together. So but there's definitely a difference.
Do you mean also in people's reaction to the camera, Derek?
Yeah, if you want to take, yeah, if you want to, that'd be a great take on it, Dotan. I mean, because I know
Yeah.
you being out there, I feel like photojournalist is, you can get away because you're working. I feel like street photographer, it's like you don't come off as professional. It's not like you're working a story. You're kind of like you could be a random, nice little sweet old guy on the street who just likes taking photos, or you could be a creep. And I figure it's like, there's a lot more,
Yeah.
ambiguity there.
I
How are
think
you
it
received?
Yeah, it depends on the culture. So we shoot all over the place, and in France, for example, especially in large cities like Paris, there's a different law, first of all. Like you're supposed to ask people for permission, and especially for publishing photos and so you can take a photo, but if you wanted to publish it, then you'd have to have their permission if they're recognizable on the photograph. So it can be a little tricky, and then it creates this sense of they're entitled to their privacy, and so they can react a little more harshly and so on if you don't ask them for permission. So it really depends where you are. In Cuba, there's also this thing of especially in poor neighborhoods where the people expect to pay them if you took their photo. So there's lots of countries where they'll come up to you if they saw that you took a photo, and they'll ask for money. So I'd say, how you deal with it depends vastly on where you are and what sort of situation you're in. I tend to explain to people what it works well. I find that it works well to explain why you're taking photos, even if it's for you and for your own documentation of the place, and maybe you want to make a little photo book for yourself, or I find that it's helpful because people now understand that there's what the motive is, and that the motive is pure, that there's nothing sneaky about it. So I think it's good to be honest about that. So same in Venice Beach when I was shooting, for my books, I would tell people who were curious. I would say this is, might end up in a book at some point. I'm doing a book about the dogs of Venice Beach, or I'm doing a book about the culture of Venice Beach, and I find that once you give that argumentation to people and they understand your motive, they're much more comfortable with it. Or they just opt out of it, which is okay too. But at least you're clear and nobody's freaked out.
Does the way that you guys go into a different location depend? Does it change location to location as far as the types of images that you're taking? Are you going into a specific place where, say, I've heard Portugal has great architecture. People are like, you would love Portugal. It's got great architecture. So, of course, if I were to go there, I'm thinking architecture all the way. Do you guys approach locations differently based on what the given location offers to you, or no?
I would say I think well I'll answer this with Gail because Gail introduced something into our last workshop where we urged people to pick a theme when they, this was in our Paris workshop in April. We could have gone around the streets, and there's lots of interesting, architecture is amazing in Paris, and there's lots of other themes that are interesting, but really what is personal to each workshop participant is what matters. So how they connect it's the intersection of what is typical of the place and what is personal to the photographer. And I think that's how you make your best work, when you can interconnect these two things. So we offered them a whole choice of, romantic Paris was one, abstract Paris. Somebody was into bikes that we showed. Jerry was into bikes, so we said, bikes in Paris would be great. And so I think it makes for, yes, there are typical things, and I think it's really good to focus on what's typical of the place. Like, you mentioned Portugal and architecture, but if you don't really care about architecture, then it will be really good for you to make, meaningful images of Portugal. So if there's something else in Portugal that you can relate to, I don't know, like, the food or the agriculture or the peasant life in Portugal, or divers off the coast of, so whatever, connects with your own interest, I think is where it's really good to go, and where you're going to get the best results.
Yeah, and for me, being a photojournalist, I've always been really focused wherever I go. I do a ton of research. I make shot lists. It's very focused when I travel. And when I travel for leisure, I still do a ton of research. I still do shot lists. I do have themes in mind. And for our solstice photography workshop, we wanted people did more photo essays in Paris. It was photo essays they produced. But in our solstice photography workshop, they actually produced a story and they focused on a particular story, on a particular group of people that had floats, got behind the scenes. Sometimes they followed them home at night. So they really got in depth beneath the
That was
surface.
real. It was real documentary. That workshop was really more documentary focused than
Documentary.
than
So
travel.
we offer both kinds of workshops. We offer travel photography workshops, documentary where you really do in-depth stories where you go beneath the surface. So yeah.
I'm kind of interested. What's the dynamic when you guys are out together? I mean, Gail, obviously yours is going to be more along the journalist style where, and Dotan, I feel like you get out, you're great at storytelling, your books, it's like you obviously you know how to put cohesive themes together. Do you shoot more like a photojournalist when you're with Gail, or Gail, do you shoot more like a street photographer when you're with Dotan?
No, I still shoot like myself, but I actually think it's very cool. We really complement each other. My weaknesses are Dotan's strengths and vice versa. And I think that's why we work so well together. Like in my bag, I still travel very light, like we've been really stressing to people. Figure out where you're going for the day and pack for that day that you're going to be shooting. But when I travel, I bring my 400, I bring my wide angle. I shoot with a lot of zoom lenses because the quality of the zoom is as good as a fixed lens. But I take it all with me because I know I'm going to be needing it at some point during the trip. Whereas I think Dotan travels a little bit differently and he's not hauling a 400 millimeter unless he's going to be shooting wildlife or something.
I mean, the 400 doesn't really work well on my Leica M, so that would be a tiny, tiny little thing in the middle of the rangefinder. No, yeah, I mean, I tend to just go with just my Leica and a 35. Recently, actually, you can see around my neck here, I picked up at B&H actually, I picked up a Nikon ZF, and I think there was a 40 millimeter that I had on it. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to do some color because my Leica is a monochrome, and I wanted to get some autofocus and stuff. So I was changing it a bit, just kind of for fun, and also to do more travel stuff versus my street stuff. So I enjoy both, but yeah, I tend to pack really light. I tend to just like put the camera around my neck or around my shoulder and go out. And I don't like to have too many lenses hanging around. I don't want to have to make the decision. I think partly is just I'm lazy about it. And I'd rather walk up to something and really get into the situation rather than shoot it from across the street with this big heavy lens. So, everybody's got their own style or preference when it comes to that. But we do stress to our students to try and go minimal because it helps everybody move along and also not get paralyzed in terms of creative options. When you only have one tool to work with, you figure out how to use it, and you don't have to look through your bag. And by the time you look through your bag, your situation is gone anyway. So it's easier to just shoot with what you have.
Yeah, and when I'm in Paris or I'm in a city, that's all I have is the 22 to 70. That's my lens of choice. It's if I'm in the Amazon or in Alaska and I'm shooting wildlife, that's when I'll bring out the 400. Just to qualify that.
Now,
Absolutely.
before we get to one final fun question, I'm going to throw in. We had a question about my passport. No, I still have not renewed my passport. No international street photography for me for however long the passport office takes. But I want to throw a fun one out here to close out on. If you guys, I'm wondering if you can call to memory a photo like the shot would have been the shot of all shots, the moment of truth, the decisive moment, whatever term you want to use. Is there any photo that you missed for whatever reason? Settings were off, something you just weren't there in time. Is there any photo that haunts you? Because I know I have one, and I always wonder. I'm like, every time I talk to great photographers, it's like it's always the question I forget to ask, but I always wonder: is there that one haunting moment that you didn't get?
Oh God, I have like I think partly out of like self-preservation, I do mental blocks on these. Like I just forget about them. I because I don't want to beat myself up, and it's just no need. But I remember. I mean, I can't talk about a specific one because I can't. Honestly, I block those out. And I'm sure there's plenty. Uh, but one thing I've learned is to not if there's a great situation, I'm not talking about something that's random and but if it's amazing and just shoot enough, shoot different angles, overshoot it, like who cares? Spend 400 frames on a 15-minute, 20-minute situation if you have to, but make sure you get it. And even if you think you have it, and I think that's the mistake that I made early on when I was kind of transitioning into a professional career. I would shoot a scene and do a few spare shots here and there and then move on and thinking I had the shot and then I'd get home and be like, oh wow, that's the one I thought I had, but it's slightly off, the focus is off. And I didn't realize it when I shot it. And of course, I'm shooting manual focus and everything, so it's a little hectic and it's hard to tell if I really nailed it or not. And but even if we're using autofocus, like you don't know if the autofocus actually nailed it until you're back in your, on Lightroom. So yeah, so that would be my advice. If I could turn your question into advice, is
I
if you have
love
a
it.
great scene, just shoot the hell out of it is the answer. Even when you have it, you're 100% sure you have it. Just keep shooting. And this is, if I had to say just one thing for this entire presentation, shoot it till it's gone, till the scene is over. Don't go, to the next thing just because you think you have it.
Great
Gail,
advice.
I want to give you the light, what
Okay.
would you say?
So mine was very early in my career. I was in graduate school at Ohio University and taking my first class, and I was working for the Athens Messenger. My first assignment, don't ask me why they gave me this one because it was a really important one. It was a guy that had 16 different personalities. And at that point, I only had a 50 mm lens. It was a low light situation. And I didn't do a great job. And I beat myself up. I think I beat myself up for 3 years or 4 years. I mean, I did good enough that it was published. All these Ohio papers picked it up because it was an important story. But after that, I got serious. I went out. I bought some better equipment and I worked every frame and just, that was a real good lesson for me. And I took it to heart and I said, I will never do this poorly on a important assignment again, on any assignment again.
I love it. Look at that. We end with some wonderful advice. Of course, I know a great place where Gail could have bought an extra lens for
I
that
know, I
job.
know.
Yes, no, but I want to thank you guys again. Of course, a ton of experience and information that you bring to us each and every time we have you on. Still more to come in this series as well. Of course, we dropped the link for part one. And if you missed any of part two, we're going to drop that link next time we have Gail and Dotan on. So stay tuned for that. Of course, check out the links that they did drop. They do this all around the world, year round, pretty much, right? You guys are always have something going on round the clock. So plenty of opportunities for you guys to learn. I say this all the time on this platform. Invest in yourself. Gear is cool, gear is great, but the ultimate investment that you can make in whether it's a hobby or a career is really investing in yourself and entrusting your future of photography to people who have been doing it for years and they've been where you've been. So learn from their mistakes. So I'll leave it there. Dotan, Gail, great to have you on as always. And to all of our viewers out there, thank you again for tuning in. This has been another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space, now in the books. Catch you all next time.
Bye.